He woke up and saw blood on the sheets. Not lipstick, not spilled wine, real blood. Beside him, a strange woman trembled. No silk dress, no perfume. Only rough, overworked hands and eyes that carried an entire forgotten life. She was just a room service maid, or at least that's what he thought, but her gaze... It wasn't the gaze of a stranger. It was the look of someone who had lost everything, and somehow survived. He, a billionaire born of secrets. She, a woman born of survival. Two worlds that should never have collided. Yet fate had mixed blood and silence on the same bed. The question was no longer who was lying then, but who would still be alive once the truth came out. Because sometimes, the cruelest thing isn't the past. It's love when it forces you to face yourself. And if you've ever loved the wrong person, but never been wrong for loving, stay. This story is for you. Cassian Holt woke to the scent of iron and the blur of motion. His mind, trained to analyze risk and eliminate error, froze. Blood. A streak of it against the white sheets. Clean, perfect, violated. He pushed himself upright, muscles rigid, eyes narrowing on the small figure at the edge of the bed. A woman. Not anyone he knew, not anyone who belonged here. His breath steadied into silence, the kind that frightened boardrooms and rivals alike. Order was his religion, precision his armor. Chaos had no place in his world. Yet it was here, breathing beside him. The woman's shoulders trembled beneath the hotel blanket. Cassian's pulse thudded once, twice, then slowed to calculation. No panic, no emotion, just control. Always control. He searched the room, no sign of forced entry, no noise from the corridor, only the low hum of the city far below and that single, impossible stain on the linen. She shifted, just slightly, as if sensing his gaze. Cassian exhaled through his nose, calm but cold. Whatever had happened here, it was already contaminating his world. And Cassian Holt did not tolerate contamination. Her voice came before she lifted her head. A whisper, hoarse. Where am I? Cassian didn't answer. He studied her, the cheap fabric clinging to her, the faint bruise along her collarbone, the fear that sat heavy in her eyes. Everything about her screamed wrong. What's your name? His tone was flat, mechanical. She hesitated as though her own identity weighed too much to carry. Amara Venn. The name lingered in the air, fragile and human in a room made of glass and steel. Cassian's eyes didn't soften. He repeated it quietly, testing the sound. Amara. She flinched when he said it. Not because it was harsh, but because it was the first time anyone had spoken her name in a voice that mattered. Outside, the city lights bled through the curtains. Inside, two strangers sat in silence. One stripped of power, one terrified of it. Neither yet understood that this moment would bind them far beyond this room. Amara's fingers clutched the edge of the blanket. Her breath trembled as she spoke. I was delivering room service. They told me 6116. The numbers on the doors were wrong. I thought... Her voice broke. I thought this was another room. Cassian's stare was unblinking. He had heard every kind of lie dressed as apology. This sounded different. Too raw. Too simple to be rehearsed. He scanned the suite again. The silver tray on the table, champagne untouched, strawberries still cold. Every detail confirmed her story. Still, logic refused to yield. Do you expect me to believe that? He asked quietly. Her eyes met his for the first time. No angle, no seduction, only fear. I don't expect you to believe anything. I just want to leave. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Cassian nodded once, slow. Get dressed. Relief flickered in her eyes, but he didn't miss the shame that followed. She gathered her torn dress in silence. And as she did, he realized the strangest part. He wasn't angry. He was unsettled. The door closed softly behind her. Cassian stood alone, the room silent except for the pulse of city lights through glass. The blood on the sheet had dried into a dark bloom, small but defiant against the perfection of white. He should have called security, filed a report, erased her name before it existed in his mind. But he didn't move, Instead, his gaze stayed fixed on the mark she left behind. The faint outline of her hand on the table, the scent of fear still hanging in the air. A life that did not belong here, and yet somehow did. He poured a glass of water, but it tasted metallic. Wrong. His reflection in the window looked unfamiliar. Cassian Holt, the man who built an empire by erasing mistakes, had just found one he couldn't delete. Somewhere deep inside, a fracture formed. Silent, invisible, but real. And as the city hummed below, Cassian realized something unsettling. The blood on the sheets was not the problem. The problem was that he cared. Savannah taught Amara Venn how to disappear. Her mother worked double shifts at a diner that smelled of grease and rain. Her father had left before she could say his name. By 10, Amara knew the difference between hunger and humiliation. When men yelled, she went quiet. When bills piled up, she smiled. Silence kept her safe. That was her mother's rule. Don't make noise, baby. Noise brings trouble. At 16, she fought back once. A man cornered her outside a restaurant. The police saw anger, not fear. They called it assault. She called it surviving. The record followed her like a shadow. Years later, New York gave her nothing but survival. Cheap rent, cheap uniforms, long nights cleaning rooms she could never afford. Still, she worked. She always worked. But after that night, the blood, the billionaire, silence no longer felt like safety. It felt like drowning. Cassian Holt was born into marble and glass. His crib overlooked the skyline. His father taught him early that emotion was weakness, and that weakness cost millions. At 8, he learned negotiation before kindness. At 15, he replaced affection with numbers. By 27, he ruled Holt Global, an empire of logic, contracts, and fear. People called him efficient, ruthless, brilliant. No one called him kind. That word had no value in business. He built walls around himself, high enough that even regret couldn't climb. Love, empathy, guilt, they were loose threads in a perfect design. Yet, lately, something had cracked in that design. He couldn't sleep, couldn't forget the woman with trembling hands and wide, terrified eyes. Cassian had erased hundreds of faces, but hers stayed, like static in his mind. He found her again at the Halcyon Grand. Not by accident. Nothing in his world was accidental. Amara was pushing a cleaning cart down the service hallway. Her shoulders were smaller than he remembered. The air between them froze when she turned. "Mr. Holt," she whispered, eyes wide. Cassian said nothing. He only watched her, the hum of the fluorescent light flickering above. Every instinct told him to leave, to walk away and forget. But he didn't. He stepped closer instead. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Neither should you," he answered. It wasn't anger, it was something quieter. Recognition. Two people from opposite worlds standing in the same shadow. That moment should have ended there. It didn't. They met again behind the hotel kitchen, where the air smelled of bleach and old food. Amara folded her arms, trying to steady her breath. "Why are you here?" she asked. Cassian looked at her, voice even. "Because I can't stop thinking about the blood." The words hit her like cold water. Not cruel, not gentle, just true. She wanted to hate him, but hate required strength, and she felt only exhaustion. "I told you it was a mistake," she said. "I know," he replied. "That's what makes it worse." Silence filled the space between them, heavy and human. The hum of the refrigerator, the flicker of yellow light. It all felt like confession. When he left, she stayed, her hand trembling against the wall. She wasn't sure if she feared him, or the part of herself that wanted him to come back. Days passed, then weeks. Cassian began visiting the hotel under the pretense of reviewing investments. Staff moved aside. Amara avoided his eyes until she couldn't anymore. They spoke in shadows, near loading docks, in storage rooms where no one listened. About her mother's illness, about his father's demands, about the price of pretending. He brought her coffee once. She brought silence in return. But in that silence, something fragile grew. Cassian had never cared to understand another life. Now he found himself waiting for hers. For Amara, it was madness, a dangerous comfort. A man built from power, listening to a woman built from survival. And yet, in those quiet, stolen minutes, they both felt the same thing. For the first time in years, they weren't alone. The nights stretched longer. Sometimes Cassian stayed after his inspections, sitting in the dim break room where Amara brewed cheap hotel coffee. He never touched the porcelain cups, only paper ones, folded at the rim, warm in his hand. He watched her move, careful and tired, as though every motion had to apologize for existing. When she finally met his eyes, he said softly, "You make chaos feel like peace." She froze, unsure how to hold words like that. No one had ever told her she could bring peace. She only knew how to clean up other people's messes. For a heartbeat, silence filled the space between them, gentle, not heavy, the kind that asked to be believed. Cassian left before she could answer, leaving the empty cup on the table. She touched it after he was gone, tracing the rim where his fingers had been. It was absurd, dangerous, but she couldn't stop smiling. Outside, dawn broke over the city. Inside, something fragile had begun to live between them. Weeks later, Cassian called her. His voice was calm, too calm. "There's a charity gala this weekend. I need you there." Amara almost laughed. "You can't be serious." "I am." She tried to refuse, but the way he said it, steady, certain, pulled her in. 2 nights later, she stood beside him under chandeliers worth more than her entire life. Eyes followed her everywhere. Women in diamonds, men in tailored suits. Their gazes cut sharper than knives. Cassian's hand rested lightly at her back, his posture unreadable. To them, he was a god among men. To her, he was the only anchor in a sea of judgment. She smiled when they looked, pretended not to hear the whispers. But inside, her heart pounded, begging to vanish. By the time the orchestra played its final song, she wasn't sure which hurt more, the shame of being seen or the ache of wanting to belong. He found them near this grand staircase. Theodore Holt, Cassian's uncle, moved like someone who owned the air around him. His voice carried quiet authority. "And where did you say you're from, Miss Venn?" Amara straightened her shoulders. "Savannah," she answered. "Ah," he said, the sound sharp and polite. "And your parents?" "My mother raised me." He smiled, but his eyes didn't. "A housekeeper at a gala. How refreshing." Cassian appeared beside her, expression cool. "Uncle Theodore," he said evenly. "We were just leaving." For a moment their gazes locked, old power against new defiance. Then Theodore's smile faded. "Be careful what you bring into this family, Cassian. Some stains don't wash out." He turned away, cane tapping softly against marble. Amara's throat tightened. Cassian touched her arm. "Don't let him get to you." But he already had. Later, when the crowd had thinned, Cassian led her into the library. Quiet, heavy with the scent of leather and old dust. He closed the door behind them. For the first time all night, his face softened. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not running." Amara looked at him, unsure whether to smile or cry. "I almost did." "But you didn't." Silence settled between them again. Not the cold kind, but the kind that listens. "Why me?" she asked finally. "You could have anyone." Cassian's jaw tightened, then eased. "Because when I'm with you, I feel like I've earned something, not bought it." Her chest ached at the simplicity of it. No charm, no performance, just truth. He reached for her hand. She let him. The world outside faded until only the sound of their breaths remained. The next morning the library was empty. Amara wandered through the hall, still wrapped in borrowed calm. She found an open door near the study, a place she hadn't seen before. Inside were boxes, stacked and labeled in neat handwriting. She opened one without thinking. Files, contracts, company reports. One paper caught her eye. Project Meridian, Holt Global Defense Division. Her mother's name was listed below. Maria Venn, linguistic consultant. Her breath stopped. She turned the page. Incident report, classified fatality. The date matched the year her mother had died. Her hands shook. She read it again and again until the words blurred. A sound behind her. Cassian's voice, low but sharp. "What are you doing here?" She looked up, eyes wet. "Why is my mother's name in your company's files?" Cassian froze. The silence between them shattered everything that had felt safe. For the first time, Amara realized that love might not save her. It might destroy her. The file shook in Amara's hands. "Did you know?" Her voice was a whisper sharpened by disbelief. Cassian's face hardened. "No." But his eyes told a different story. There was knowledge there, guilt, a fracture too deep to hide. "Don't lie to me," she said. "You knew something." "I didn't know it was her," he replied, the words barely leaving his throat. "I swear, I didn't." Amara's breath hitched. The walls around her tilted. All the quiet, fragile trust between them collapsed in a single heartbeat. "She died for your company," she said, "for your family's money." Cassian tried to reach for her hand. She stepped back. The space between them turned to air too thick to cross. He had built empires with control, but this was loss, and no equation could fix it. Amara turned away first. "Silence doesn't keep you safe," she whispered. "It only kills you slower." The door closed between them, soft as grief. Cassian faced his father in the boardroom, sunlight slicing through glass and chrome. Gregory Holt barely looked up from his tablet. "You went too far," Cassian said. His father's tone was dry. "You're emotional. It clouds judgment." She was a mother, not collateral. That made Gregory glance up. "Collateral built this empire." Cassian's pulse hammered, but his voice stayed steady. "Then it's time something else sustains it." A quiet scoff. "You're throwing away legacy for a woman who means nothing." Cassian leaned forward. "She means everything." For a brief second, silence. Thick, dangerous. Gregory's jaw tightened. "Walk away, Cassian, or you'll regret this." "I already do," Cassian said, and left the room. For the first time, he felt the cost of standing up not for profit, but for something far rarer. Truth. Night fell heavy over Amara's small apartment. She hadn't heard from Cassian in days. The knock came after midnight. Just one, then silence. She hesitated before stepping closer. An envelope lay at her door, plain and unmarked. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. Inside, a single sheet of paper. 4 words. "Walk away while you can." No signature, no clue, only the faint scent of cologne and cigarette smoke. She looked out at the window. The street below was empty, but she felt watched. Every light, every whisper turning against her. Fear crawled up her spine. She clutched her phone, thumb hovering over Cassian's name. She didn't press call, not yet. The city outside moved on like nothing happened. But for Amara, the air itself had changed. Some secrets didn't stay buried. Some enemies didn't forget. Cassian arrived at dawn, unshaven, eyes wild from sleeplessness. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew. "Pack your things," he said. Amara hesitated. "Cassian, no arguments." Within an hour, she and her brother Malik were in the back of his car, city lights fading behind them. The road wound north toward the Holt estate on the Hudson. The air grew quiet, heavy with things unsaid. Malik slept in the seat beside her. Cassian drove without looking back. When they reached the estate, he turned to her. "You're safe here." Amara studied his face. "Are you?" He didn't answer. Later, she stood by the window, watching the river move slow and dark. For the first time, she wondered if safety and captivity might look the same. The house was still at night, too still. Amara woke to a noise outside, a branch snapping, or maybe footsteps. Cassian checked the cameras, frown tightening. Someone's been watching. A name surfaced in his mind like a ghost. Vincent Kane, former Holt executive. Brilliant, unstable, fired after the Meridian leak. "He blames us," Cassian said quietly. "He blames me." The next morning they found tire tracks near the gate, a cigarette butt, a message carved into the dust on a window pane. I remember. Amara stared at it, a chill spreading through her chest. Who is he? Cassian's jaw clenched. Someone my family tried to erase. He looked at the horizon, where the sky met the river like a wound reopening. The past had returned, and, this time, it wanted blood. The world outside the Holt estate had turned into noise. Headlines, threats, silence that hummed like static. Inside, Amara tried to breathe normally again, but fear clung to her skin like dust. Cassian stood at the window, hands pressed against the glass, watching the reflection of his own guilt. He won't stop, he said quietly. Vincent's after everything I built. Amara stepped closer. Then let him take it. You don't owe your family's sins. He turned, his face shadowed by determination. If I have to burn my name to keep you safe, I will. The words hung between them, steady, raw, final. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe love could fight legacy, but deep inside, she feared the cost. Cassian took her hand, holding it tight. No one touches you. No one touches Malik. That's my promise. She nodded, tears burning her eyes. He kissed her forehead gently, not like a lover, but like a man anchoring himself to something pure for the first time. Outside, thunder rolled across the Hudson. Inside, they held on to the one thing still untouched by fear, each other. Days blurred into cautious calm. Malik sketched in the kitchen, sunlight spilling through the windows. Cassian worked in silence, his phone never far from reach. Amara, cleaning the counters, felt a sudden wave of dizziness. It passed, then returned the next morning, and the next. She sat in the bathroom, trembling hands holding the test. The tiny pink line appeared slowly, painfully certain, pregnant. Her breath caught, half joy, half terror. Life. In the middle of chaos, life. When Cassian came home that night, she didn't know how to say it. He saw it in her eyes before she spoke. Amara? She nodded, whispering, We're having a baby. For a moment, his mask broke. His hand found her stomach, hesitant, reverent. A fragile smile touched his lips. Then came the fear, the one he couldn't hide, because he had never known how to protect what he loved. And now, he had everything to lose. Cassian's investigation finally led him to an old, sealed record, an erased name on a corporate ledger. Vincent Kane, born Vincent Holt. His stomach turned cold. Vincent wasn't just an enemy, he was blood. The illegitimate son of Cassian's grandfather, erased, disowned, left to rot. He read through reports, letters, hush payments. Every line felt like a blade. Gregory Holt had buried his half-brother to protect the empire, and now, decades later, that brother's son was coming to collect the debt. Cassian shut the file, hands trembling. This wasn't a war for money anymore, it was vengeance written in DNA. He looked at Amara, asleep on the couch, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. How could he tell her the truth? That the man hunting them was part of him, part of the same poisoned bloodline. For the first time, Cassian felt the full weight of his name. It wasn't legacy, it was a curse, and he would have to break it, even if it meant tearing his world apart. The envelope came on the rainy morning. No return address, no name, just her own written across the front in red ink. Amara opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph, grainy, faded, unmistakable. A teenage girl, her, a boy gripping her wrist too tightly. Fear frozen in her eyes. Her breath stopped. The edges of the photo cut her skin as she held it. On the back, in scrawled handwriting, Your perfect girl has secrets too. Vincent. Her knees buckled. Memories she'd buried clawed to the surface. The alley, the screams, the disbelief, the trial that turned her into the villain. Cassian found her on the floor, the photo clenched in her fist. Who sent this? He asked, but he already knew. She looked up, tears blurring everything. He knows, Cassian. He knows what they did to me. Cassian pulled her close. She didn't resist. She just cried, the sound small and broken. For years, she'd hidden her scars. Now they were currency in someone else's war. That night, Amara sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes fixed on the endless dark. She felt hollow, emptied of fight. Cassian joined her, quiet steps on the wooden floor. He didn't speak at first, just sat beside her, their shoulders barely touching. When he finally did, his voice was low, unguarded. "I know what he's trying to do. He wants to break you, to make you believe you're still the girl in that picture, but you're not." She shook her head. "You don't understand. That night ruined my life." He turned to her, eyes steady. "No, it didn't. You survived. You kept going. I love you, not because you survived, but because you never stopped fighting." The words cracked something open inside her. Not pain. Release. Amara's hand found his. She didn't need to speak. In that quiet, they weren't a billionaire and a housekeeper, not victims of legacy or ghosts of bloodlines, just two people, scarred and unbroken, choosing to keep fighting, together. The storm came without warning. Headlights slashed through the fog outside the estate, engines rumbling low. Cassian was already awake when the first window shattered. "Stay with Malik," he told Amara, voice steady, weapon in hand. "Don't move." Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Vincent's men, armed and relentless. Cassian met them head-on, his body moving with grim precision. Years of control, now burning into survival. Then Vincent appeared, stepping through the doorway like a shadow made flesh. "Family reunions," he sneered, "always end in blood." Cassian leveled his gun. "Not tonight." They fought. Words first, then fists, each blow a history of betrayal. Vincent's rage was wild. Cassian's restraint, colder than steel. He gained the upper hand, pinning Vincent to the floor, gun raised. One pull, and it would all end. But he hesitated. Vincent spat blood. "Do it. Prove you're a Holt." Cassian's finger trembled. Then he dropped the gun. "No," he said quietly. "That's your legacy, not mine." Outside, sirens grew closer. Amara's voice called his name. Cassian looked at the man he refused to become, and finally let go. Morning broke with police lights reflecting off shattered glass. Vincent was led away in cuffs, cursing every name that had buried him. Cassian watched silently. He'd won, but the cost had stripped him bare. Within weeks, Holt Global fractured. Stocks plummeted, board members defected. The empire his family built on silence finally fell under the weight of truth. Gregory Holt resigned in disgrace. Cassian refused to rebuild. "Let it end," he told them. "It's time something honest takes its place." Reporters called it madness. Shareholders called it weakness. Amara called it freedom. They sold the penthouse, closed the offices, and vanished from the city's noise. For the first time, Cassian breathed without the weight of marble ceilings or bloodline shadows. He had lost his empire, but kept the only thing that had ever been real. Amara. When he held her that night, the world felt smaller, but his heart no longer did. Spring came to the valley like forgiveness. The air smelled of rain and earth, soft and new. Amara's labor lasted through the night, long hours of pain and breath and whispered prayers. Cassian never left her side. When the cry finally came, it was sharp and beautiful, cutting through everything that had ever hurt them. The nurse placed a tiny bundle in Amara's arms. A daughter. Cassian leaned close, his voice breaking. "Welcome home, little light." Amara Holt Venn. Her eyes blinked open, dark, curious, unafraid. In her, their worlds finally blended. Not power or poverty, but love reborn. Cassian kissed Amara's forehead, tears falling freely. "She'll never know the world that made us bleed," he said. Amara smiled weakly. "No," she whispered. "She'll know the one we built." Outside, the rain stopped. Inside, a new story began, quiet, unshakable, alive. Years passed softly in the Hudson Valley. The river shimmered with morning light, the house filled with laughter instead of echoes. Malik grew tall, his drawings covering every wall. Alara learned to walk on the grass barefoot, chasing butterflies. Cassian worked with his hands now, fixing fences, planting trees. Amara read on the porch, sunlight warm across her face. Sometimes at dusk they would sit together, watching the horizon fade. No more sirens, no boardrooms, no whispers of legacy. Only life, simple, imperfect, real. Cassian still dreamed of his past, but the nightmares came softer. Amara still carried her scars, but they no longer defined her. They had survived the storm, and for the first time, peace didn't feel borrowed, it felt earned. The world had always measured them by money, power, and bloodlines, but love measured them by something greater: courage. Cassian Holt walked away from the empire that once defined him. Amara Venn stopped hiding from the silence that had kept her small. Together, they built a life not of wealth, but of peace. They learned that love was not about escape, but endurance. Not a dream, but the strength to face what tried to break them. And in the quiet of their new world, love became the only truth that never demanded proof. If you believe that love can rewrite destiny, leave A and subscribe to hear more stories. Stories where love isn't fragile fantasy, but the reason we survive.